Welcome to Tech Insights. Today I have with us Chris, our Chief Information Security Officer.
Hello.
And Martin O'Riordan, our Head of Cybersecurity.
Hello.
Welcome to Tech Insights. So recently you both completed your certification for Essential 8 assessors.
Yes,
we
right.
did.
Yeah. Could you start by sharing with the listeners a little bit about what the Essential 8 actually is?
Yeah, sure. Look, it's a government-led initiative that started back in 2017. It came from the Australian Signals Directorate. And what they did is they're looking at, well, how do we protect businesses, more specifically around government, so government agencies initially, and then it spread out to other companies. But they looked at a number of controls or mitigation strategies that would mitigate ransomware and malware, bad things basically happening to people's computer systems. And that list was around 37 controls initially, but they were ordered into like essential, excellent, good, nice to have, basically. And the Essential 8 is the Essential 8 of those 37 controls. And then that has evolved over the years to expand as computer systems change rapidly. And, you've got now also different maturity levels within Essential 8. So where maturity level 1, which they'll sometimes say ML1, maturity level 1 in Essential 8, is what the government now would like most, if not all, businesses across Australia to adopt so that they're protecting themselves adequately. ML2, so maturity level 2 and 3, are generally there for companies that are of a higher risk. So think again, government agencies, which are actually mandated to level 2, but then contractors to government, universities, etc. So they kind of choose between level 2 or level 3 is generally the idea.
Wow, sounds pretty heavy. Do you think we could break it down a little bit further and just let the listeners know what those actual 8 components are?
Yeah, sure. The 8 components, just from a high level, and I think something to be aware of straight from the beginning is it's not just 8 things, it's 8 categories. So it's not 8 controls, it's 8 categories of controls. So even at maturity level 1, you are at like 40 plus controls. I think it's about 47-ish controls that you would need to put in place to meet that particular requirement. But what they are, just from a very high level, and we can dig into them a little bit more afterwards, but just from a high level, it's application control, right? You have, which they might call application whitelisting, is what it used to be called. You've got patching of operating system. You've got patching of applications, right? You've got MFA, so multi-factor authentication, regular backups. You've got macro management, right? So restrictions of macros. You've got restricted administrative access, and you've got hardening of user applications. So it's those 8 things as categories.
Probably really important for everyone to understand that the Essential 8 are technical controls. So when we talk about security and we talk about our layered, security posture, there are hard controls or technical controls like the Essential 8, and then you have the soft controls like the training and policies and other things that you need to have in place. So whilst the Essential 8 is a really, really good place to start, it's not all of the security posture that you need.
No.
So it's one of those things we really do want to let people know that you can't just put the Essential 8 in and you're magically protected from all security risks.
Correct.
Well, that's good to know.
No, it is very good. There's a lot of, we've spoken about this often with businesses. It's like Essential 8 is a good starting point, like Martin said, from a technical control perspective, but there's a lot of different frameworks that you could choose. And the best thing to do is actually get your incumbent or someone with knowledge, a cybersecurity expert, to actually sit down with the business, find out what that business does, actually understand a bit about the business, and then talk about the different frameworks and what's actually going to meet your requirements. Some of the top frameworks that we generally discuss with our clients are things like, obviously, Essential 8 is what we're speaking about today, but you've got things like NIST, cybersecurity framework, which is a global, North American standard, but taken up globally. And it's a very popular one. Another one would be things like an ISO standard, because that you can actually be certified in, whereas you can't be certified in Essential 8, you can't be certified in NIST, but you can be certified, so have a stamp of approval. Much like ISO 9001, people relate to quality control, right? So ISO 27001 is around cybersecurity. So you've got those ISO standards, and there's others out there as well. But those kind of top three, the Essential 8, NIST, and ISO are probably the top ones. I would like to mention as well, there is a newer one picking up ground and getting a lot of chats with governments at the moment and companies is something called the SMB 1001. So that is something to watch, and it's something that we're starting to have discussions around for our customers as well.
It's kind of a set of framework that is designed more for small and medium business. So it is a little bit easier for businesses to meet the requirements of that and have that framework actually deliver something for them. And it still has some elements of self-assessment, but as you increase in the levels in that particular framework, you can also be assessed in it as well.
Yeah, so it's an interesting starting point, and again, it's like $100 to get going. So it's an interesting one to start with as well.
Yeah, and it's good that you mentioned that basically not one size fits all. No. It's important to make sure that your situation and your business is assessed so that you go down the right path and have the right cover.
Absolutely.
We actually find quite often that we take bits from lots of different frameworks because that works better. So not necessarily that one framework is the right fit. It can be that you take elements from different frameworks for that particular business.
Yeah. That also is important that people know that they can have a customised solution and not have to take all of it.
Yep, absolutely.
What are you sort of finding that people out there are thinking cybersecurity-wise? What's their biggest fear, do you think?
I think it's a hard one because people do value things like insurance. So especially businesses. Businesses, you rarely find one that doesn't have building insurance or contents insurance or even, insurance against their directors and officers doing the wrong thing. But quite often they don't think that putting protections in place like cybersecurity as being as important as those sorts of insurances, or that they think just having cyber insurance fixes all of the problems, because we do know that prevention is always better than the cure. And you would much prefer to not have the building burn down than just claim the insurance afterwards. Yes. Like it is kind of one of those scenarios where it is always better to have the things in place beforehand. And it can be hard for businesses to think and justify and go, well, hang on a second, I've never had a breach. I've got all these things in place, but I've never had a breach. Well, that's probably the point, is to have the things in place to prevent the breach, and that's why you don't. So it really makes a lot of sense to do those things and have that in place before there is an issue.
Yes, definitely. Prevention is always better than cure, for sure.
But it's interesting, a lot of people don't necessarily think like that. And, you have businesses who've paid insurance for years and years and years against their building burning down. The likelihood of your building burning down is way less than having your systems breached.
Yeah, agreed.
I think often too, people of small businesses think that, why would they be targeted? That kind of thing, like the cyber criminals only target big business. So I think that's kind of a bit of a myth that needs to be.
Yeah, it's a myth that we bring up often, I think, in most conversations because it tends to persist out there for some reason. And, we always discuss it as the scattergun approach. It's a case of like a lot of these things start with a phishing email And those phishing emails are generally not targeted. They scattergun sprayed out there in the millions, and someone happens to click and hand over the details. So as far as a cyber criminal, and it's all automated, by the way. So cyber criminals got awesome tools these days, and probably making it worse with AI now, where it's an automated run, and whoever clicks and hands over the details, it automatically passes it into a list, and then that list gets on-sold to another third party, and then that third party like does the initial breach, and then that breach or that access is then sold on to another criminal party. So it's a big operation, and it's not necessarily targeted. Don't get me wrong, it can be targeted, and that's when we started talking about ML2 and 3, like a university would be targeted.
Government agencies are targeted, and big business is targeted.
Yeah.
Critical infrastructure.
But also you see any business that handles large financial transactions, they're well and truly targeted.
Oh, it's just a scary thought. So you've both been involved in cybersecurity for quite a number of years. Just curious to know why you're so passionate about it. Maybe I'll start with you first, Chris.
Yeah, sure. Cybersecurity I always found interesting, maybe from just because I was a techie and interested in technology and being able to circumvent systems, right? So back in '98, I taught my first cybersecurity course to students on securing Windows NT 4. And that was basically teaching them how to secure an on-premise server. And I've been hooked on the technical side for a long time, but then once I ran my own businesses and things like that, I got onto that thing of, hold on a second, I got passionate about educating people and business owners of protecting their business, because it was that point, that knowledge gap, let's say, of actually connecting the dots between if this piece of technology goes down, right, because it's been hacked, breached, or it's had a denial of service attack or something on it around cybersecurity, what does it actually mean to that business, right? And to equate or connect the dots is very, very important around if that goes down, what is the reputational damage to your business? Or if your payroll system goes down, as an example, because of something going down affecting the payroll, and you can't pay your drivers, right, of a delivery business. I'm looking at you, Toll. How long are you going to stay in business? Like, for Toll, that was close on disaster. So I'm passionate about helping business understand. So for me, a lot of it is an education piece, which is why I love to do a podcast like this to actually discuss it.
Yeah, excellent. And Martin, I know you two have also had many years in cybersecurity and probably seen a lot of changes happening over the years. What sort of brought you into
I think I was just, I'm probably, while Chris sort of got involved quite early in the technical side, I got quite early involved in the bits you don't think are too exciting, the governance and risk and...
Oh, my favourite word, governance.
It is one of those areas where it's really important and people don't necessarily think it's important. So I think I just got involved quite early because I saw the importance of it, and from there it just came to a point where you want people to put it in. You want people to actually value having security across their organisation, valuing the data of their customers. It's one of the things that I get quite passionate about, is the fact that most businesses will value their customers. They do. Like, that is their bread and butter. That's what they get up every morning to do. And yet a lot of them don't value their customers' data to the point of being able to put effective controls in place to prevent that data being stolen or leaked. So I like to try and, like Chris, educate people on the need of having those effective controls in place to make sure that your business can be there tomorrow when other businesses might fail because they've been breached and had all of their customer data stolen, and the government's now, fining them $50 million, and the Australian Security Commission is now fining them for breaching their directorial responsibilities. Those things are bad. Maybe if we take more of a stock on preventing it in the first place, it would be a lot better. And yes, there is a cost involved to that. But like everything in business, there's always costs involved. Staff are a cost. Buildings, premises are a cost. Everything's a cost. If you can't afford to protect your data, you probably can't afford to be in business.
Yeah, and that definitely is a good point. And as much as I say governance, yes, it's not the most exciting topic. It is important to have people like you that are passionate about that and can explain to, businesses the importance of it. So it's yes, I'll stop teasing you about it now.
No, you won't.
So what kind of pushback do you have from businesses with regards to cybersecurity? Like what is normally their main objection?
I think you actually sort of touched on it before. I'm not going to suffer a breach. It's not going to happen to me is probably one of the biggest ones. Or that it's too expensive is probably another pushback, is that they don't see the value in spending the money to actually protect the data. But as I said, that they'll protect the building and they'll put locks on the doors, but they won't necessarily put locks on their data.
I think it's human nature at the end of the day, because you're talking about trying to assess risk, and it's not an easy topic, mostly because you want to fall asleep when talking about it, right? And it is. So when people are going from a gut instinct of, do I want to spend this money to protect, the risk analysis has not been done. Because if you had done the risk analysis, then it's an easy decision, because you can actually show what that loss rate is annualized. If it happens, because you can take that percentage, I'm only going to get breached once every 10 years. You could still work out what that would cost then per year, and then your security mechanism costs X against that. And if your security mechanisms are around the same or lower, then it makes sense to go in. But quite often that risk analysis has not been done. And like I said, humans are not great at off the cuff risk analysis.
We've actually seen more traction in the cybersecurity space since the government implemented, fines for privacy breaches. So the notifiable data breach that came in 2017? 2018, yeah. That really did see a bit more traction in the marketplace, where people saw, well, hang on a second, I actually have to do this.
Well, they're more accountable, aren't they? Because all of a sudden there's, a punishment for not protecting people's data.
And not just the reputational damage, because before it was mostly just reliant on reputational damage as being a driver for people to do the right thing. Or the fact that you might have, be sued by customers for losing data. Now, you don't have to have that particular driver. It's government will actually control that side of things. So,
yeah, I think it definitely does put more emphasis on it, and people will take it a bit more seriously, that's for sure.
And I think also having a few fairly large breaches regularly kind of brings it to a fore as well. Some of the Optus and Medibank and those breaches.
Yeah, people are watching the Medibank one now because it's going through the legal process with the class action suit. So there could be some really interesting things that actually come out of that around because a lot of the legislation is written relatively open in language. So there's open to interpretation, right? And then it's often tested in a court of law. And, well, now it's in a court of law. So now we start to see some of what is expected of businesses. Okay, admittedly, it's businesses of that size, like Medibank is large compared to a small, medium business. It's not going to be quite the same, but it's going to give you at least a starting point of going, okay, well, what does a judge consider appropriate controls, cybersecurity controls within a business of that size? So that will be interesting, and I think the cybersecurity community is actually watching that very carefully to see where it goes.
Yeah, I think having the spotlight on it definitely brings a lot more notoriety to the cybersecurity, and people giving it a bit more thought. And where is my data? What's happening to it? It's definitely important.
Also, I think that it brought it home to a lot of people in their own lives that having those identity documents like driver's licenses and passports and having to get them reissued it tends to actually bring it quite make it quite real that it does have an impact on people. So losing someone's license number or their license does have an impact on someone.
Yes, that was a bit of a...
Yeah, it is. And you're right. It's because then people do start to question a little bit more of the businesses that they are trusting. Because I think there was almost like a blanket trust of like, oh, of course they're looking after the documents. I was like, well, are they? So I know I went to my financial advisor and they asked for, as they do, like everything, right? And I was like, because again, they were like, oh, just email it to us. I was like, that's not happening.
Well, it's amazing how many places still do that.
Yeah, exactly. So I explained to them why, and they were like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And I was like, do you have multi-factor auth installed? And do you have this? And it was like, pretty much, what is that? Da-da. So I was like, go speak, because they had an incumbent IT. So I said, can you go and speak to them? Make sure you got MFA on. Make sure you're storing these documents correctly. Come back to me when you did. And they came, admittedly, awesome, which is why now I do work with them. Is they came back after 2 weeks and went, okay, got MFA installed and everything. We store it over here. This is what we do. And I was like, cool, great.
But most people wouldn't question it, and that is the thing, isn't it? That most people would just email it over. I mean, I know previous to our discussions, I probably would have just emailed it, but now it's like, well, if you don't do that, I'll bring it in or
securely transfer it somehow.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's interesting, but I think it is. Because again, cybersecurity, as it's a normal saying, right? It's everyone's responsibility. And it does have to start, again, with us. It's our documents. It's our identity. You know, it's like, you lose your tax file number. That is a pain because they don't issue a new one. So what they do is they put a note on your account at the ATO. And every time your accountant needs to check something, they've got to call the ATO, have them unlock the account so that they can access it, do stuff with it, and then they lock it again. And then that's for life.
Oh, I never knew that.
It's complicated, you know, and of course your accountant's just going to charge you more because it takes so much longer.
There's an extra, 30 minutes.
So don't lose your tax file number.
Okay, try not to do that. So I guess, can you share any stories or case studies relating back to the Essential 8 where, it's made a big impact on the business to have those components in place?
Look, I think, and I'll hand over to Martin after this one, I think the last one I dealt with is kind of a more, let's say, obvious one. And they had a contract with a large provider that was contracted to government. So what happens is you have an on-flow effect in that contract. So they were at risk of losing a multi-million-dollar contract because they were not Essential 8 certified to at least level 2. So that in that case, it was obvious that they had to get those controls in place. So in this case, it was not lose a X $1 million contract. Exactly. So, yeah.
Yeah, so the supply chain now is getting quite difficult to navigate. So you have a lot of small businesses who may provide goods and services to larger businesses who provide goods and services to government, and it flows all the way down. So it's now they're getting quite a lot better at making sure that everyone in the supply chain has the basic level of security in place, which means that we're seeing more small businesses being captured by these requirements. And this isn't even the threat of, having a cybersecurity fine placed against them. This is just about losing their bread and butter, making sure that they actually can deliver the services and deliver those contracts. So it's an interesting space. You're going to see a lot more businesses being required to actually deliver on that.
That's a good point. If you're a business owner, I would be having a look at who I supply to and check who they supply to. Because if you supply, like you make a widget that goes into let's say a valve that then is supplied to a water company for those valves, and they have a contract to like mains water, right? Now all of a sudden you've got critical infrastructure in your path. And you might not have realized because, those valves also get sold to pool companies and various other things. But you happen to also supply it to this company that's critical infrastructure. And think critical infrastructure, right? And governments. That's where I would start. So things like water, electricity, any kind of transport as well. So if you supply to rail, shipping, so anything through docks, airports, those sort of things you need to think about as a supplier, because they may not have asked yet, right? But it could come. Like the one we had was a contractor, they're electrical contractor, but they supply to main roads. So now it's sitting on like the M1 connector and etc. So that all connects. So they're going to be asked, okay, what level do you meet at some point?
So people really do need to analyse every aspect of their business these days, don't they?
Unfortunately, yes.
For those just starting out on the cybersecurity journey, what would be your advice?
Engage with your IT provider would be the first port of call, I would suspect.
Yeah.
And ask them the questions. What have they been recommending to them that at some point you said, no, I don't need that, and revisit it, because quite often, IT providers make lots of recommendations over time, but companies will make decisions based on their priorities, and sometimes it just never gets revisited. So it's probably a good opportunity to just revisit that and just go back to your provider and say, hey, look, I know I might have said yes or no in the past. Can we just run through it all again and maybe have a look at my entire cybersecurity posture?
And do all IT providers have cybersecurity departments, or is there, for people?
They won't necessarily have departments, but most MSPs will handle elements of security. Definitely, you have to, like patching your operating systems, doing backups, recommending MFA, things like that are going to be done. It's just a case of whether that is a holistic approach, or if it's enough around that. So, if I was running a business, I would definitely be looking for a provider that had something like a cybersecurity department, or look for a third party to do the cybersecurity to work with your MSP. Like we do a lot of that as well, where we'd have a business that wants to do Essential 8, as an example. They've got their provider that's put in the controls, because these are all freely available on the government site, which is awesome. You can download all the controls, you can hand it to your provider and go, hey, we're interested in level 1, which is where you should start. And then they can start looking at putting those controls in, and then potentially have a dedicated cybersecurity partner actually do an assessment for you. Would be a good way of doing it. So you're getting that third party look. Like quite often companies will get a third party to do a risk assessment, as an example, and then bring in their incumbents, whether it's around cybersecurity or IT, to come and then fix or remediate those issues that they've found in the risk analysis. But just going back to, where do you start and so forth. So bear in mind then, if most MSPs are doing some elements of cybersecurity and you say to them, are you doing cybersecurity? The short answer is yes. Now, is it enough for what you have? That's not necessarily true. So what I would do is probe a little bit more. It's kind of like start talking about directed due diligence, right? And making sure that you understand a little bit more about it. So you're asking the appropriate questions. And if you're not sure where to start, I wrote a document a while ago, which is just a simple set of questions, like a starting point of going back to your MSP going, hey, can you answer these questions for me? Because if those get answered appropriately, then you know, okay, I've got a good starting point. Yeah. If you're still concerned, another way, again, is bring in a provider that's dedicated on cybersecurity or has specialty in cybersecurity to come in and have that initial talk. So it's not an assessment, like an essential 8 assessment, but certainly come and have a chat about cybersecurity, what things are in place, and because that will get the conversation going at least. And you'll have an understanding of, oh, okay, I need to look at NIST, or I don't have this, or maybe I should do an essential aid assessment because I do supply this to that provider. So that it's good to have that conversation.
Because I feel like it could be quite overwhelming for businesses just sort of starting out on that extra cybersecurity journey.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the listeners about essential aid or cybersecurity in general?
Look, I think you're going to see more businesses sort of go down that pathway to essential aid. I mean, Australia is trying to up the game quite a lot in its cybersecurity posture, and that starts from the individuals. So from everyone, through businesses, through to government. So the fact that I think people are starting to value their own data a lot more will drive businesses to comply more, and it does drive decision making in government to make sure that businesses are doing everything that they can to make sure that their customers' data is secure.
Well, their expectation set, isn't it? It's a bit higher.
It is, and I think that's for too long people just didn't really value their own data. You know, how many people I've spoken to go, oh, well, the hackers can have all my data, it doesn't matter. And then you start to talk about, well, these are the implications of that.
Connecting the dots.
Yeah. And then they start going, oh, maybe they shouldn't have my data, and maybe they shouldn't have my tax file number and driver's license and passport. And
Yes, it'd be preferable for them not to have that.
it is definitely preferable not to have that. And I guess some of the tips that we also talk about a lot is just your social media. Make sure you've got it locked down. Like really, honestly, too many people have it open that everyone can go and see everything, and it is a very good starting point for cyber criminals, not just in personal life, but that's how they can target people in businesses as well, because quite often people share where they work, and if they're trying to target a business, they'll look for all the staff first, and that's how they can start doing targeted phishing email attacks. And
There are a lot of oversharers on social media.
And there are. And then almost everyone's probably been involved in some kind of a website breach. So where you signed up for something, you've bought something from somewhere, and your email address that you signed up with and a password that you put in were probably involved in some kind of a sale on the dark web. You can go and have a look online. Have I been pwned? It's a good place to have a look. Your email address is probably out there and probably a password associated with it. So a lot of people who don't have different passwords for everything, it's a very easy way into a business is having someone who uses their one password for everything across their personal
Not
life
me.
and use it in their business life as well. So it starts at home.
It's
Starts
also
with
small
individuals.
things, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Tips I would give for a business owner is start with your data, because you're talking about valuing your data. So 2 questions, right? What data do you have? First question. The second question, where is it? So how do you protect it? So who's got access to it? That's what I mean by where is it?
Yeah.
So what data are you collecting, and how's it stored? How's it secured? Who's got access to it? That's the first thing, because you're not going to get much further than that if you don't know what you have, you don't know what you're protecting. So start there. Once that little thread is going, because you'll probably have to ask a couple of people and they'll go off and start to look and come back to you with some answers, engage with some experts to come and have a chat.
And then there is the next stage after that, which is one of my real pet areas, is if you don't need the data anymore, get rid of it. Too often we just keep data forever and ever, and if you don't need it, if it's going back years and years and it's old personal data of customers, just get rid of it.
Do you think it's because people just don't know what to do with it, so they just keep it because that's
just in
easier?
case. I might need it for marketing.
Well, you never know.
It is true, and also it's probably a case of they don't think about it. It's just data, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I
So
don't
we
think
said,
it's just data.
what data and where is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Just think about it. Like every piece of data, every little element that you have, whether it's a date of birth, it's a, the tax file number, it's a this. Every little point of data is a point of risk. every single one. Technically, there's a cost. Yeah, there's a value attached to every single one of those. So,
Well, that's some great advice there. Always scary, but very helpful. So if listeners would like to get in touch, Chris, very active on LinkedIn.
yep,
So
you
people
can find me on LinkedIn.
Yep,
Absolutely.
Christopher Haig.
Yep.
And if people want to reach out to Martin, probably best via the Mercury IT website.
Yes.
Because he does have his LinkedIn very locked down.
Lockdown. No social media.
No, none.
Well, thanks for joining me today. And we appreciate your insights.
Thank you.
Thank you.